Welcome to another edition of CAKEPOPS, part of the Chicago Alternative Comics Expo's online programming. I'm Tyrell Cannon, one of the organizers of CAKE, and today I'm joined by comic artist MS Harkness. MS is the creator of many autobiographical comics such as Rotten, Tinderella, Desperate Pleasures, and the upcoming Time Under Tension. She's also the organizer of multiple comics retreats over the last few years, bringing comic creators together in one space to share and create new work. Join me for this interview with MS discussing the comic scene, conventions, summer camp, hot tubs, and her upcoming book. Welcome to an edition of CAKEPOPS. It's really good to have you here. I know you've attended CAKE a few times, right? Like, how many CAKEs have you been to?
I've missed it. I think 2015 was my first year, where I was like a little baby larva, like tabling with my professors from the art college that I went to. So, yeah, it feels like forever. I always try and get over to Chicago in the summer, even when there's like a giant pandemic going on, just because I miss just that experience of coming.
It's a great town for comics, and I don't think that I saw you at CAKE. I think I saw you at Columbus was the first time I saw your work. Was it at CXC? Or maybe you were at CAKE and I missed it, but I can't remember when that first Columbus Crossroads was.
I think it was one of the first years. It wasn't the first, but it was a while ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I would agree that was the first time we ran into each other.
Yeah. So you've done a variety of shows though. How many shows have you done around the country? Like, is there some that you've kind of been to more than once other than CAKE? And
yeah, I feel like at this point it's more like what haven't I done? I still haven't done TCAF. I still haven't done CAB in New York. If that's still even happening, I don't know. I haven't done MoCA, but I feel like most of the other ones where, you know, I've gotten on a plane to travel and like do this a couple of times now. So
yeah,
I won't be going to SPX this year or Autoptic just because I don't have anything out quite yet. I'm still just shoveling away at a third book, but yeah, I would definitely go to CAKE if it was happening just because I'm so close now.
Right. So when you do shows, you tend to have sort of a persona that you put on at shows. Is that true?
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because I was thinking about it, how like far into that I would go now that it's been a couple years, and I'm gonna turn 30 this year, so it's a sort of like, mm-hmm. Oh, you want to like get adult like woman clothes and like stop buying like fast fashion bullshit that's like made in a sweatshop somewhere. But yeah, I mean, usually one of my shows I have like a very heavy lidded eyelash on and like the kind of clothing where you're like, oh, is she warm enough? But no.
It gets cold in the convention halls.
Yeah, especially at SPX, it's like I gotta just be like a normal person for that show because that ballroom was always freezing where we used to have it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of I don't know, I just put on like an ultra femme persona in the sense that usually I'm like very tan and I'm very athletically bodied, so I look like a weird shiny holographic human being usually behind my table.
Well, the thing I love about comic shows and in general is just the variety of people. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I really love going to a space that seems like it's filled with different types of creators, but everybody feels kind of at home. I mean, you hope so, at least. I mean, that's what we hope for at CAKE, is we want people to feel as comfortable as possible so that they can kind of be themselves and be with their work and feel good sharing it with other people. When you are, at shows, do you usually participate in a lot of the extracurricular things as well?
I wish. I get really, like, I don't necessarily think overwhelmed. I think I just, like, have it in my mind that the moment I walk away from my table, I'm going to lose a whole $4 if I'm not there the whole time. Yeah. So, like, I don't get up nearly as much as I should and, like, really peek around, because I'm usually just so like glued in, and that it usually takes me the last hour of the last day to even see what my friends are doing.
Right.
But there's been a good handful of panels and such that I've gone to. I like back watching a lot of them online, like where SPX would put all their stuff on YouTube.
Yes.
And I would say like CXC did a really good job of like I'm gonna talk up the home show of like the last year where they had it all virtual and did a bunch of really good programming that you could just essentially like listen to his podcast later.
Right.
I think it's just like as a creator, I just like appreciate that, and that I'm busy. I have to run my stupid lemonade stand for a few hours.
Well, and that's the hard thing about doing shows as a creator is you don't always get to go to all the cool talks and workshops and things like that. I know that before I was tabling at shows, that was the thing I was always most interested in, was going to those things. I mean, obviously it's cool to walk the floor and see everybody, but if you can hear people talk in depth about their work or see some sort of demo, that kind of thing is I think fantastic. So your hometown show now is in Columbus, because you're in Columbus now, yeah?
Yeah. I'm excited. This year we're going to have it, and I fully forgot to apply for a table, so I'm just going to be the slummy guy running in and just trying to table with somebody else probably. But the like pre-party sort of show on Friday night is going to be my 30th birthday party, because
Awesome.
I'm like turning 30 over the weekend, so I'm planning on kind of seeing if we can't run a reading show where then we all have like cake and cupcakes at the end, and I kind of balance the like good MC / I'm gonna make it about me party.
Yeah.
So,
That's cool. That's
yeah.
cool. What's the vibe like there in Columbus for as far as the comics community goes? I mean, you guys have that amazing museum, obviously. I know there's a lot of other creators there. Like, do you feel since moving there that you've been able to get involved there?
Absolutely. Like I taught at the College of Art and Design during the pandemic, like over Zoom, which I would say was a pretty rough experience for everyone involved. Really, academia sort of runs the show here, just because everything is so tied to an institution. And it's tough because Ohio's a weird swing state. Like, usually when you have like I'll just talk just flagrantly and wrongly about a bunch of things right now. Well, usually when you have like a more liberal state, you have a lot more like government funding for the arts, and so things are very tied to institutions in the way that everything's like tracked via taxes and things, because it has to be. And then like when you have like a red state, everything's a little bit more DIY because there's just no money, and like it's a lot more scene involved because you have like just a handful of like really committed people kind of doing everything. And here it's like, it's a weird mix of both. So you have like a lot of like effort and energy that wants to come forward, but like the institutions are very like, they have their tunnel vision about the things they want to pay attention to. And I mean, here it's really nice because you have the College of Art and Design, you have the Billie Ireland, you have just CXC as its own sort of like, it ties into these things, but it's on its own fundamentally. And so it does feel a little bit like, I guess, ADHD from the level of which it'll be like, Dave Pilkey's coming to town, but then we've got like, like someone like MS Harkness doing autobio, but then we have this superhero person. So it's just sort of like, we try and do a good job of like hosting any comics related person, period. And so I feel like I'm seeing a lot of like printmakers and painters and stuff too that like kind of also get these spots where they're like involved somehow in what we're doing. So there's the pros and cons to it, but it is like a really established, easy to fit into, at least from my perspective, like sort of, I had the easiest time moving here and kind of finding my footing because everyone was just so awesome. So I like everyone that lives here, we are very much like, please move here. We just want more friends. So.
Right. It's hard. Like, I think comics is such a solitary thing that, I think it's easy for people not to think about the community and kind of getting connected to other people. But there's cities that do have really good and broad scenes. I mean, Columbus, Chicago obviously has a really broad scene where it kind of is a very diverse set of types of comic makers that are here, which I find to be, so interesting and so amazing, but also I think that it can seem like it's not it's not one community. It's a bunch of different communities, which is fine. So and you studied comics in school, right? I mean, that was like you went in Minneapolis, correct?
Yeah, I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and so I have a comic BFA from there. And they just recently had started a program here for that. Like, I think they had just recently graduated their first, like, 4-year class of comics-specific kids. So it's exciting because like the program's growing here. I mean, it was really interesting from like the experience I had, sort of seeing like what these kids are doing, and I feel like they have a lot more focus and a lot more sort of specificity behind what they're doing. Where it's like the sooner they kind of figure out like if they want to be like more of like an indie printmaker, they can just do that. Or like if they're like, I want to work commercial, like it's very easy for them to do that. And there's a lot of experienced people there who know kind of everything. Which isn't to say I didn't have that, but it was much more like, figure it out. You'll do fine. You'll just go and find your way somehow, which I did. So yeah, it's I don't know. I think at this point in time, I'm kind of anti like go spend a bunch of money on that. It's just because I gotta just because I have a Sally Mae sending me the "oops, you missed one" emails, every so often. So.
Oh yeah, I've been there. You got a bright future in paying back loans ahead of you. I think one thing I've always found challenging or interesting is when you're in school, it seems kind of like you're by default part of some sort of community, and you're by default having conversations about work because you're in classes. And I feel like a lot of people have a hard time when they leave that environment still finding a way to have those conversations and those engagements. When
Absolutely,
you graduated,
yeah.
did you still feel like that was something that you needed? Did you recognize that you needed that, or was it something that you immediately were able to find outlets for? Or
I don't know. Like I had a pretty tight knit group of friends when I was there, and it was really funny. Like in these sort of experiences where I've done like mentorship opportunities and grants, or just like otherwise had to like explain myself to other people. I'm very much like, it's not so much that I like talk people out of like trying to give me ideas for things, but I think a lot about what I do. And like I always have, to the extent of every choice I've made is like pretty intentional about like whether it's like mark making or storytelling or what have you. It can be a stupid choice I'm making and someone can talk me out of it. But a lot of the times where I've done these sort of experiences where I've had like some other academic or like visiting artist or somebody like talk to me about my work and maybe kind of like ask me like, oh, like, have you thought about this question? I'm like, yeah, I have, and it's fine. Like I've always like been very driven in that, like, I don't know, telling stories from my own life. So
yeah,
most people, like 99% of people don't even want to like talk to me about like, like the personal experiences that like might, elicit other artistic choices, without getting too nitty gritty and like, what's in my work. But I'm always like very bullheaded, and that like before I graduated, like I had a studio in my house that I built because I was like, I'm not going to have a studio anymore. I'm going to move out. I better have a desk. Right. And I was very much like, yeah, I can work by myself and just like do my own thing for hours and hours, but then I will like call up, my friend Pete Fakey or Sean Knickerbocker or someone who was in Minneapolis when I was there. And was just like, we got to hang out. You want to go draw? And like, we just do that. So
I think that's,
I don't know.
Yeah, you've always seemed extremely proactive, and I think that that's a trait that a lot of creative people, especially comic artists, maybe don't naturally have. But what I find amazing is that when people are a little more open about it, whether they be people that are touring or doing some sort of meetup, that the results tend to be something that's very worthwhile, I think, to people who come to those and people who engage with those. But I think it's easy for most people within this art form to kind of feel a bit solitary. And there's parts of it that are great to have solitary. I mean, I love sitting by myself and drawing for hours and hours. It's great, right? But there's times when you really do need that feedback and that encouragement a lot of the times too. Do you have regular conversations, meetups, studio days with other artists there?
Not so much. I feel like Columbus is a pretty big like drinking town because we have college football here, and so like, I mean, me and most of my friends, like, we'll hang out and have a beer and chill. And so most of the time we're, like, talking about these issues we're having or these conversations that we have going in the back of our head, and we can kind of strategize back and forth. And it's just a lot more casual. Like, we're not all hanging out and drawing and kind of doing, like, the kind of awkward artist thing where we're, like... I mean, we all know each other, too, for the most part, and that, like, we're not trying to, like, get to know each other and do the kind of introductory stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we have it laid out in the way that, like, you know, if one of us is having an issue with something, like, we can be like, I want you to look at this and I want your eyes, and it's, like, not even a question. Like, we'll just, like, follow them to their, you know, sketchbook or whatever they're doing, so.
Right. I think that there's so many times throughout the day that I just want someone else to look at something I'm doing and tell me, like, you know, another perspective of, like, does this arm suck? Did I make this hand right? You know, it can be as simple as that, or it can be like, okay, I'm planning this new project and I have no idea how to approach the characters. And then having the ability to talk to somebody else about that is really nice. And I think a lot of artists, especially the ones who have just graduated, you know, sometimes have a hard time maybe even realizing that they need that or seeking that out. And you see their work and you can immediately tell, like, you know, you really haven't spoken with anybody about this, have you? Like, you need to maybe show this to someone else, because a lot of these things, they're not necessarily, you know, bad or mistakes. They're just, you know, you haven't considered an outside perspective. You know, you're so in your own head that you've maybe missed something.
Yeah.
So, you know, you obviously are maybe a little less intimidated with those kind of conversations to begin with, but I'm curious what was the genesis for these? Are you calling them cartoonist retreats? What is it you've titled your meetups that
I'm
you do?
so bad at naming things. Well, I mean, that was, like, mostly because, I mean, I'm, you know, for the uninitiated, I've made these sort of, like, cartoonist retreats in Ohio, in, like, the most scenic part of Ohio. So, like, it was mostly because of COVID. I think I specifically was, like, putting on social media to some extent that I was really bummed out about, like, just the fact that, like, SPX was canceled again.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's plenty of people that are like, you know, it's because we need to be safe, and you're not thinking of all the immunocompromised people and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I mean, I was just, like, having feelings, like, yeah, I don't want anyone to fucking die. Like, I think that goes without saying. But, like, the minute that, like, me and pretty much all my friends were vaccinated, it was just like, why the fuck can't we hang out? Like, what is the excuse now? Because for the most part, I would say most of my friends, like, you know, if they do have, like, a parent that's, like, you know, undergoing chemo treatment, or, you know, they need to watch that, they're smart enough to just, like, isolate for the 2 weeks or whatever. If they need to, like, protect other people in their lives. So, we had, you know, me and, as I'm just wandering around Ohio, like, this new place that I live, like, the most scenic area is this place called Hocking Hills, which is just, like, an hour sort of toward West Virginia from Columbus. So you can totally just, like, rent a lodge there and just, you know, you could have a wedding there. You could have, like, a family reunion. So I was like, let's do a comics retreat. Because it's, in plenty of other art forms, that's totally a thing that people do, where you'll have, like, fiber retreats or retreats for people that do, like, ceramics and things like that. So it was really just an intimate, like, let me just invite, like, friends of mine that I haven't seen in years, and or people that I've only talked to on Instagram, where I have a feeling that they're not going to freak out in the woods if they're there for more than 3 days. And I have, like, experience as, like, a camp counselor, so I kind of have a general idea of, like, how to make a room full of people work, and to kind of create, like, an environment where people feel like they're totally fine to do whatever they want, but there is a schedule if they want to follow it. You know, they have the ability to kind of break away, to go hiking, to just doodle it by themselves, or just, like, sit at a big table and work, and kind of freely float in and out, just depending on how they're feeling. Which is, for cartoonists, like you've been talking about, like, who are usually working in isolation, who only have their friends on, like, Instagram to talk to about, like, these problems. And I was pretty specific about wanting to invite people that have never done a residency before, that have probably, you know, maybe they've been to art school and maybe they missed that environment, but maybe they've never done anything and they have no friends in comics where, like, they feel like they can call people up like that. And so for those people where they don't have that built-in community by, you know, going to shows, or they just started drawing during COVID, it was like a revelation to them in the way that they were like, oh my God, I can, like, meet my friends and we can hang out, and, like, everyone's so cool. So we did one in the winter and we did one in last summer, and and with a few hiccups here and there, as far as just like weather and things like that, it went really well, and was like a really good experience for everyone involved. Or we've got some like returning vets, and we have a lot of people that really wanted to come back, but I was like, you can't do 3 in a row. Like, we want to make room for other people.
Right.
So it's definitely something I'd want to do again.
Right. Yeah. What was your process in sort of deciding, where to go, how many people should be there, what you planned, what you didn't plan? Like if someone else was going to do this, what are some questions they might want to answer for themselves?
I think that you want to keep in mind there's going to be people that really want to go outside, and there's going to be people that don't have any interest in being in the woods, and it's just like incidental for them because they're indoor cartoonists. So like, you can't have anything too rustic. It needs to kind of feel like a hotel in the woods, which means it's going to be a little bit more expensive, which means you have to charge a little bit more or, make your food a little bit cheaper or whatever.
Right.
Which then disqualifies some people that can't necessarily come because of that price point, which then leads you to go, okay, am I going to like try and fundraise or reach for, some donations or an investor in some way? And I've sort of solicited donations with a kind of like, you give me money and expect nothing policy, just strictly because I'm a single person doing all this and I don't have time to like do more work than I can. But, for a lot of people, there's going to be a lot more people that could come if it was free, if they were paid for in some way, and it would be a lot more feasible because then assuming you live on the other side of the country, you have to buy a plane ticket, which is, it's stupidly expensive to fly into Columbus.
Yeah.
I have no idea why. Just no one wants to come here. So, there's a lot of like those sorts of things. The way that I usually put together like bunk situations, it's sort of by, the gender that you are telling me that you are and the way that your pronouns are. Which, can for some people be this or that. I'm very much an authoritarian in the way that I plan it, where you come in and I'm like, here is your bed. Like, I did plan for you in mind that if you were a bigger individual, you probably got the bed. If you're an older individual, you probably got the bed. If you're a little, like, scrawny and squirrely, you might have gotten a cot. Like, that's just how it is because this is the group dynamic. And
sure.
No one's come to me and been like, I can't do this. This is impossible. Right. Because I'd like to think that they understood that they were accounted for and that I thought about what they would want.
Sure.
Here is exactly what you got. Like, it's not
even that much is that's a lot, and that's a good thing to think about. I think it's easy to if someone else was thinking about planning in a meetup like this to just be like, oh, we're just gonna go to this place. But even just that little bit of extra thought of like sleeping arrangements and getting that kind of information from people seems really vital.
Yeah, and I'm maybe it's very clear here. I'm like an over-explainer, and that I'm trying to like let you know I thought about it. So it's like people hear me and they hear every third word because they're like, yeah, okay, like it's all fine, right? Like they don't want to be a bother for the most part anyway.
Right.
But I made sure if we had vegans, we had like a mostly vegetarian spread with like the encouragement that there's a grill if you want to go get like a dinosaur steak and fry it or whatever, you can go do that. That's totally fine. But 2 meals a day paid for. Most people want to, like, at lunchtime go back into town, which is, like, relatively close by, and get, like, Taco Bell or just smoke cigarettes and just see the sights. So they could do that. You
guys, you planned, so your meetup included, they get to come there, they get to have a place to stay, a bed, and meals. Was there other things that you included in the price?
Coffee, snacks. So feasibly I wanted someone to come in with 0 money at all and they would survive. Right. Like where they wouldn't be starving at noon because there'd be like a bunch of protein bars and like spin drifts and stuff. There was like always a glut of food to the extent where when we left the retreat, there was like extra stuff I was trying to like throw at people. And then they have like a tabling event that's sort of kind of loosey-goosey where we just sort of show up to the place and you kind of get thrown into wherever will fit and you kind of don't complain as far as like if you don't have a lot of space or Wi-Fi. So that was all included in that like $600 price was like what I asked. And that's about a week of time away from home.
So the retreat plus like a 1-day table event.
And then ideally you get to sleep with a host in Columbus where, ideally you don't have to pay for like an Airbnb or hotel. This time around we have so many people coming and like so many alumni coming to table after it. Like I'm thinking we're going to have to get like another Airbnb where they can split it 5 ways and it won't be like the worst. But there's a lot of people in Columbus where they've got like extra bedrooms where, we just set up a cot and you can stay there and that's a free. And they might even be willing to feed you. So it's like that homey where we've worked really hard to drive it down where, the most costly thing will just be whatever like restaurant. Oh, I dropped my water. The most costly thing will just be if you wanted to go out to eat or something after, which given, at least with the winter retreat, Omicron was happening at that point. And nobody got sick somehow because we were all super diligent.
That's good.
But I was trying to tell people like don't go out and like breathe everyone else's air till like the last night just so that way we don't spread anything.
Right.
So and they were all really receptive to that. Everyone's vaccinated. Everyone had their boosters. It's all like very well run in that way.
Well, and in theory, if you were going to do one in 4 years, that would be hopefully less of a concern. Knock on wood. So I mean, it's so crazy. It's so awesome. It sounds like. Just putting all that together sounds like a lot of work, but it's obviously feasible. I think a lot of people get intimidated by that, but the comics community, from what I can tell, at least here and there, is very open to, like you said, like, oh, come stay at my house for a night and before we go to the retreat, or I'll drive you to the airport, or whatever. And I think some people are afraid to ask for that kind of help, but I don't think they realize that if you ask somebody, they actually want to be part of that. They want to help. They want to do that. Once you guys all got there, and you're all at the cabin or whatever, the house you're staying in, what was the vibe like, and what do you think people got out of it? And like, do you feel like that dynamic was hard right away, or was it easy? Like, what was it you were hoping for, and what was the reality of what happened?
Well, for some people it's a reunion, and that they haven't seen each other in 3 years. So there's some people that know a couple people, and it's like very emotional because they missed each other, and it's been such a time. And like they very much kind of planned it in the way of like, I wanted to hang out with Tyrell and I haven't seen him in 3 years. Let's all go to this thing. And some people know no one. And so I wanted to kind of try and balance that in the way that there's people that like wanted to come to the retreat, and like I was very aware that it wouldn't necessarily be really cliquey if they came, but it would be like, okay, we have another guy who's friends with this guy group. Like, we need to get a couple more people in here that are kind of wild cards where they can come in. They need to have friends. They need to kind of find a place. And that person's already come, or that person, I know they'll hang out at these shows anyway. It's not as though I'm like discounting an amazing experience for them. So like some people were a little bit more shy and just they were like kind of watching everybody else maybe say hi and what's up and oh my god, you remember this time at the show, and they're like, I've never done this, like I don't know what the fuck's going on. But we try and kind of disarm everyone in the sense of we do some really quick drawing activities and just be like, we're all cartoonists, like let's just all do the thing that we know how to do. And there's very much like a sense of like when you have like a group of campers like at summer camp, these are like things you get them to do where you're kind of reminding them that like whatever is the common thread with them, you just keep kind of keeping that in the air of like we're all girls, or we're all 12 years old, or we all like TikTok or whatever. So you're kind of immediately trying to pull people away in the sense of like getting out of their little comfort zone of being like with their buddy, and like everyone just kind of gets in a circle and we do kind of like orientation as far as like don't do cocaine in the bathroom and freak out, don't start fights, don't like make me pay for $1,000 cleaning fee, like etc.
Right.
And then just like who is everyone, what are your pronouns, where you're from, so stuff like that where maybe they only know their bunkmate at the start, and then they kind of already know like somebody who's friends with a friend of theirs in another state, and so then they all go in the hot tub and they don't have to necessarily talk about comics, but they could talk about music and stuff. So I'm really proud of the fact that A, no one's gotten sick. I would say B, nobody's had the experience of showing up and then like immediately clamming up and going into their room the first 3 days and then like peeking out and doing that. Like everyone usually realizes like, you know, maybe their first time at the retreat they were a little shy and then they overextend themselves because all of a sudden they're an extrovert and they want to like be part of it. And they want to, like, tell everyone how it was last time and how amazing it's going to be, which it's like, I don't even have to do anything. I just, like, go preach the doctrine.
What kind of things did you guys, like, what kind of things were planned? Was there, like, okay, here's a drawing time, or here's a critique time, or here's a share your work time, anything like that?
Yeah, there's a schedule as far as... Like, we have like, breakfast and dinner crew. Like, everyone signs up to, like, help with food and stuff.
That's great.
So, there's, like, a set breakfast time. So, if you're, like, breakfast crew where you have to, like, get the day started, you're gonna, like, wake up a little bit earlier. So, we make a communal breakfast of, like, pancakes or, you know, like, just eggs or some vegan thing. Everyone eats and kind of starts to set up their workstation as we're cleaning up. So, like, we get the food out of the way and, like, we start putting things together. Some people want to sleep in. Some people maybe, like, take a little walk outside or, like, start smoking for the day. But usually it's, like, we work all the way to, like, a kind of, like, break period. We call it, like the siesta of the day where, like, you take a second and we'll turn the music off. It's quiet. If you want to go do something in town or if you just want to nap, you can. But then we'll work through the afternoon and then, like, eat dinner and get that started. So it's, like, hot tub time in the evening. Everyone's just, like, drinking and hanging out. Maybe we'll do, like, some kind of informal critique where, like, someone will be like, you know, who wants their stuff looked at? And we all just, like, have, like, a sort of little circle. And I'll kind of, like, help, like, be like, okay, this person actually does what you do. Go talk to them. Or, like, this is why I wanted all three of you here together so you could critique each other's work. Like, go do that. And they have, like, a really good time with that. And then the other, like, sort of recreational activities is, like, hiking and massages. We may or may not be doing tie-dye this time around because we may or may not be all getting matching shirts. The hike is, like, a pretty low intensity, very graded, scenic hike around the Hocking Hills area. It's like the Old Man's Cave hike. So it's, like, very easy to navigate if you're not a hiker, and it's, assuming the weather's nice and it's, like, summertime, we kind of, like, sit and draw in, like, certain areas if people wanted, like, their nature time. So it's a pretty quick one. I kind of encourage people that if they want, like, an actually harder, challenging, like, hike, there's a couple other spots you can go. But as far as the massages go, we're gonna be ideally renting this whole facility that's, like, maybe 20 minutes away from the cabin, and then, like, we just trade off massages. Last time at the winter retreat, we did, like, yoga in, like, this common room, and then people just kind of tag in and out, and we broke it up over 2 days. So then it's, like, you just get a longer massage. It's like, a little bit nicer than, like, a chair massage at the mall. So
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned this a minute ago when you're talking about different people being together, that you kind of, it sounds like you have been able in these so far to kind of curate them to some degree. Like, is part of the success of doing something like this, like, getting the right people there, or, like, how do you do that? I mean, not that there's a wrong person, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it sounds like you kind of thought about, like, oh, maybe these folks, other than their social things, but maybe their work too, like, how did you kind of decide, how many people, and, like, what kind of things did you want to know about people to make sure that they were going to be a good fit?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I did curate it in the way that, I mean, everyone can have their own ideas about who is entitled to these sorts of things, who's the right person. Oh, I know you have to invite them. Like, I was very much resistant to that in the way that the sort of, the nature of the time, the place, who has money and the time to spend at this kind of time. I always want it to be a good swath of people. So it's like, I don't want too many buddies there because the buddies can hang out and do their own buddy thing regardless. I want everyone to have a project that isn't necessarily, like, some BS they made to come. Like, I just want you to do, like, very much, I'm working on a book that's, like, 200 pages long plus. I just need to go there and do my thing. I wanted the idea of, like, you already have a project you're working on. I don't need you to make up, like, a funny daily thing of, like, the week at the retreat. That's not why you're there. I don't want everyone to be from Chicago, which is really hard to curate when every cartoonist is from Chicago. Like I was very much like, I don't want more than half of the people from Illinois if I can help it. I don't want all of them to be doing auto-bio just because I do auto-bio. Like, I want a good cut of, you know, different, like, kinds of people coming. So, you know, the people that you think should be coming or have to come or entitled to come don't always have money or the time, because a lot of times these people that are amazing and would be great to have at the cabin to, like, share their knowledge, they're at work. They're poor, like they don't have the means to go, or they're teaching, because that's always been an issue, is like trying to get educators to come. That would be really great, but then, you know, it's like right at the beginning of classes, so it's like they kind of disqualify themselves in that way. So it's like, for everyone who maybe is sad that they couldn't come, or is maybe annoyed I didn't ask them, like, there's reasons. And something I also found out in the way of, I was trying to talk to a couple people that help run CXC, because I was like, you know, if I have a new book coming out, am I supposed to apply for the show? Because theoretically, like, your agent or your publisher should be, like, vouching for you, right? But, like, they don't do that, and not everybody knows who you are, and you're not a rock star, and you should just apply to say, I'm interested, and I would really think, you know, maybe I'm applying as just like a exhibitor, but I have a new thing coming out, you know, maybe I could be a special guest. Right. I put out like a kind of call to apply statement of interest form, and, you know, there's people that just put their name in where it was like, oh, you know, I totally should have just asked you, I didn't even think of that, you know, and then they got in because of that. And I can only imagine the amount of people that were crossing their arms going like, why I shouldn't have to fill that out. I'm so great and da-da-da. I want to go on that. And it's like, get over yourself. Just say that you want to come, because I don't know if you have the money right now. And I'd feel weird asking if you don't. Right. So. Right.
That's good. I mean, I saw that you were doing questionnaires and stuff, and it just feels like, you know, if people were interested in going to this, it's good to know that it's in place. Or if people were interested in putting something like this together for themselves, you know, to actually think about some of those issues, not just like, what are we having for lunch and who's the coolest cartoonist I can get or something like that, but to think a little more critically about what you're hoping the vibe is going to be. Because it sounds like what you want people to get, I mean, maybe you can tell me this, but what is it you're hoping people get out of the experience? Is it that they get work time? Is it they get critiques? Is it that they get to meet new friends? Is it all those things? Like, what is it you were wanting them to get from it? And have you gotten feedback on how people felt about it after the fact?
I've gotten feedback, and I think ultimately the statement of intent is I want whatever they want to happen, because I think everyone comes in with a kind of different idea of like what it's going to be, and like maybe the amount of work they'll get done, or like whatever. I want to be very specific about what it's going to be, to the extent of here's the who, what, when, where, and why, and then here's the people that are going. There's people that don't research any of the people that are coming, and they just show up and they have an amazing time. There's people that go, oh my god, so and so is going to be there. I want to kind of corner them a little bit and get their opinion of my work, because like they're really inspiring to me. There's people that are super burned out after like long-term projects, and like they're like, I don't even want to be a cartoonist anymore. I hate this. And then they come and they have all this new energy. There's people that like feel really lost in their work, and then they have a million eyes on it, and then they have a lot more clarity. Like, I would say everyone who's come in, their expectations have been like fulfilled and then some, as far as like the time that they had and, you know, whatever spiritual, magical artist juice they get back from it. But I don't necessarily want everyone to get 20 pages of comics done and or have the most sick, you know, summer break ever, bro, and just drink the whole time. Like, I want it to just be like a very organic, you know, you were chosen to come here specifically because I feel like you will put your time and effort into this group of people. Mm-hmm. Like, you will be a good mix, and like every single person is as valuable as the next in this arrangement, because of like, these are the people that showed up. You know, these people are all going to work really good together, because I think they all have something to offer, because they all have so many different perspectives. So ultimately it's just like, I just want them to get their money's worth, number one, which I think I mean, I would say every single person that's come has been like, I would have spent $1,000 on this experience. I would have spent way more money, and this was like made to be so much cheaper than I would have thought in terms of like what I got out of it. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to just say, I feel like we cracked the code in a lot of ways, where all of the complaints that people have about shows and the sort of like lack of, maybe like connection that we can get, be it because of COVID or just social media or just the time,
right,
that we'll spend together, but we're also selling things. This is the sort of best way to get all the cartoonists in a room and like get everyone sort of all gelling, creating, but like also just being.
Right.
And it works really well. So
it sounds like an awesome thing. And I was also curious, I guess, one of the other things I was thinking about is I know the genesis of this had a lot to do with sort of the current times and issues that we're having in the world. And I'm wondering, as shows maybe start happening again, and as, again, in theory, hopefully, as everything seems to feel a little more normal at some point in the future, is this a thing you want to continue doing, or do you think there's still a place for it, or is it just a placeholder for when we have these events again?
It's all contingent on my schedule because everything is on me. So it's next year I will have my next book out with Fantagraphics, Time Under Tension, fall 2023. And I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff for that, so I know feasibly I can't, like, ask for a ton of money and then deliver a good experience while I'm, like, really frazzled. I would like to probably just do once a year just because I think that's just the bandwidth that I have for making a good time. The winter retreat we had was really good, but we had an issue with, like, an ice storm. It's Ohio. Like, if we can do, like, one in Florida, that would be great. We could just go somewhere warm. Sure. But then the infrastructure may or may not be there where, I am in town and I can help facilitate things because I'm here. Sure. So, I will definitely do these again. And like, if people, if nothing else, come up to me at shows in the future and go, hey, are you going to do that thing again? I really want to come. Like, I have no issue with that conversation. Because I'm always just, kind of keeping in mind, like, who would be a good repeat or who would be just another good person to have.
Would you hope that someone else would also plan their own at some point? Do you think this is a thing that could happen in every city? I've had people ask about how I ran it, and I'm very much like, if you have questions about it, I can forward you, my meal plans, my scheduling things. Like, this isn't that hard to recreate. It's easier if you have an investor that can put money down, if you don't have like $4 or $5 grand in the bank to then just like reserve a lodge and then accept money once you have the reservation. There's those sorts of like balances where you don't want to be ass out because of some issue and then all of a sudden you owe something, you owe this property manager like $3 grand for a cancellation or something. Yeah. Because, as a cartoonist, as someone who doesn't have a lot of money, like, that is a lot of money, and, you don't want to try and recreate bad situations. But, I mean, there's similar and different things to this. There's ways to do it cheaper than I'm doing if you want to make it more rustic. Everyone should do the thing that they want to do and realize that there's pros and cons to maybe inviting way more people or way less and just doing a really small intimate group. I'm a resource on it and that I can talk about it. It's not a good way to, I don't plan it very well in the financial way of having, everything figured out all the time, but well, I think it's something that when I saw you doing it, I thought it was amazing and awesome, because I do think that there's just some blind spots in our community as far as ways to engage with other people. I mean, yes, there's shows, yes, there's drink and draws, and yes, there's, assistant or internships and stuff, but, sometimes it doesn't feel like there's these ways to engage in the craft in sort of this intense, I say intense, but like, compressed amount of time with a special group of people. And I think that it seems like to me, like a very valuable thing that I would love to see happen more. I mean, it's awesome you're doing them, and I think a lot of people are going to be inspired by it, and that's, I think, one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you about it. But I also wanted to hear a little bit, not a little, I want to hear a lot. I'm obviously a fan of yours, but I want to know, and I want everyone else to know what you're working on right now.
It's
For
that
yourself.
third book, yeah. I'm like 3/4 of the way through, so it should be done by the end of the year or so. It's the third book, so if you're familiar with my work, I've made a couple graphic novels and a lot of minis and things where it's like my little auto-bio person running around doing things. This third book is Time Under Tension. It's similarly to Desperate Pleasures, where Desperate Pleasures was this like sequel to Tinderella. It's a sequel to Desperate Pleasures, where it's sort of just directly, again, following these events. And the idea being that I want to continue making work where it's sort of in the same vein of talking about these loaded subjects about family and trauma and what have you, but sort of getting past the sort of exploitative, here's the story and oh my god, it's terrible or it's so crazy or whatever. And just talking about, like, okay, if you're actually a person that has these issues, like, let's talk about, like, how healing and like, getting past that actually works without the sort of, like, shallow, surface level, like, self-care kind of, like, trite bullshit that you have to kind of wade through if you're someone that's had just sort of, like, adverse childhood experiences. So it's about becoming a personal trainer. It's about, like, sort of utilizing kind of movement and physicality in a way that kind of organizes your life. It's about constantly being frustrated and disappointed with, like, how things may or may not be going, well, or there's not, like, this sort of perception of getting over things, and it takes a while, and, yeah. But right now I'm drawing this big MMA scene where these two dudes are pounding each other to smithereens.
I'm very excited about this MMA
You
fight
were a consultant on it. So when I knew that I was going to do this, like, before I even moved to Ohio, and I called up a couple people. I think, Tyrell, you were probably the best resource I had of just like, yo, I make auto bio. How do people fight each other? And, I mean, I can show you. They're not going to see in the camera. But it's going good. Yeah. It's honestly a lot of just drawing chain link. So all of that, like, nonsense.
Dude, it looks fantastic. I know they can't see it, so I'll probably cut that out, but it looks really great. So you're working on this book. Who's the publisher, and do you know when it's coming out?
It's Fantagraphics in 2023, and I think we said the fall, so just next year. Ideally, I would love to have it for SPX, where I just, like, slam it on the table and it's right there. And
yeah, I'm excited for it. I think that if people haven't checked out your previous work, especially Tinderella and Desperate Pleasures, they absolutely should. If people are interested in getting a hold of your work or seeing what you're working on, what are some of the places that they can find you?
msharkness.com has all the pertinent information, and I have a store there. I do have a Patreon, so if you, like, say, follow me on Instagram and you want to become a Patreon subscriber, I can put you on my close friends list where you can watch me draw my books, like, in real time on my Instagram feed. So that's, like, a perk at, like, the whole $1 tier. It's tough because when I'm making, like, a longer form book, I'm just putting it up in chunks on Patreon. So, like, as soon as I get this fight scene done, I'm going to put, like, the third chunk of the book on there. But I'm not doing, like, week to week, special gimmies and a bunch of, like, extra, like, print thingies that you can get your hands on. If you are, like, a print subscriber, when the next time I do self-publish something, you'll get a copy of it, like, because you've paid for it. But, by all means, please subscribe to me and assist me in my sort of long-form quest to get this book done, because it really does help at the end of the month when you have bills and you need to be a cartoonist and just make things and just consume money instead of making it. So I'm on Instagram, m.s.harkness. There's all the info up there as far as, like, information about retreats and stuff like that, in addition to just my work and my life. I've got a bunch of stuff on, like, YouTube now over the course of the pandemic, and having a digital book tour. I feel like there's a bunch of podcasts and things of mine out there. So
yeah, well, I encourage everyone to go check out your work. I think that you are definitely making some of the coolest stuff coming out right now, and I'm only expecting it to do better and better. So you better keep making it better and better.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say, thanks for being a part of the Cake community, and thanks for coming on and talking to us. And we really appreciate what you're doing, and thanks again.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and be in Chicago at some point this summer. So
Awesome.
rally the troops.
Yeah,